He lost his wife. His daughters lost their joy. Then she appeared. Old Western stories.
The rain came down hard over Dusty Creek that autumn evening in 1862. The kind of rain that soaked through coats and chilled bones. The kind that made folks hurry inside and thank the Lord for warm fires and dry roofs. But not everyone had a roof that night. Eliza Monroe stood beneath the overhang of the general store, her thin shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders. Her brown dress was soaked through. Her boots had holes that let water pool around her toes. Her small traveling bag sat at her feet, holding everything she owned in this world. She had arrived on the afternoon stage with hope in her heart and a letter in her pocket. A letter from a man named Frederick Wells, who had promised her a position as a governess for his 3 children. She had traveled 400 miles from St. Louis. She had spent her last coins on the ticket. She had believed every word that man had written. But when she arrived at the Wells estate, a woman had answered the door. Frederick Wells had a wife who knew nothing about any governess position. A wife who screamed at Eliza and called her names that still rang in her ears. There was no position. There never had been. Frederick Wells had darker intentions that his wife understood immediately, even if Eliza had been too trusting to see them. Now she stood in the rain with nothing, no money, no food, no place to sleep, no way to get back to St. Louis. Not that anything waited for her there either. The orphanage where she had grown up had closed its doors. The factory where she had worked had burned down. She had no family, no friends, nothing. The tears came then, mixing with the rain on her cheeks. She tried to hold them back. She had learned long ago that crying solved nothing. But sometimes the heart cannot be controlled. Sometimes the pain is too heavy to carry in silence. She wept quietly, her shoulders shaking, her hands covering her face. That was when she heard the wagon stop. She did not look up at first. She did not want anyone to see her tears. She did not want pity or judgment. She just wanted to disappear. But then a voice spoke, a deep voice, gentle, but worn with its own grief. My twins have not smiled since their mother passed. 6 months now, and they barely speak. They do not play. They do not laugh. They just sit by the window waiting for something I cannot give them. Eliza looked up then. A man stood before her in the rain. He wore a cowboy hat that dripped water down its brim. His coat was worn, but clean. His face was weathered by sun and wind. Perhaps 40 years old, with kind eyes that held deep sorrow. He was tall and broad-shouldered, the kind of man who had spent his life working the land. Behind him, a wagon waited, and in that wagon, beneath a canvas covering, 2 small faces peered out. Little girls, perhaps 6 years old, with golden curls and hollow eyes. They looked at Eliza with curiosity but no joy, like they had forgotten what joy felt like. The man continued, his voice rough with emotion. I do not know your story, miss. I do not know why you are crying in this rain. But I know pain when I see it. I know loneliness. I know what it feels like when the whole world turns its back on you. He paused and looked back at his daughters. My name is Samuel Thornton. I have a ranch about 7 miles outside of town. It is not fancy, just a farmhouse, and some cattle, and a whole lot of empty silence. My wife, Sarah, she was everything good in that house. She made it a home. When she died of fever last spring, she took the light with her. He turned back to Eliza. I am not good with words. I do not know how to talk to little girls about feelings and such. I can rope cattle and fix fences and plow fields, but I cannot make my daughters smile. I cannot teach them to read or do numbers. I cannot braid their hair the way their mother did. The rain continued to fall, but Eliza had stopped crying now. She was listening. The preacher told me I should find a governess, someone to help with the girls, someone to bring some warmth back into that cold house. But every woman in this town is either married or has no interest in living way out on a ranch with a quiet man and his sad children. He took off his hat and held it over his heart. I am not asking for anything improper, miss. I have a spare room with a good bed and a lock on the door. You would have your own space, your privacy, your dignity. I am asking for help, for my girls. They need something I cannot provide. Eliza looked at the twins again. One of them, the slightly smaller one, was holding a rag doll that was missing an arm. The other was sucking her thumb, something she was probably too old to do, but had likely returned to for comfort. They were broken, these little girls, just like Eliza herself. What are their names? Eliza asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Samuel's eyes softened at the question. Lily and Rose. Their mother named them after her favorite flowers. She always said they were her garden, her reason to tend the earth and watch things grow. Lily and Rose, flowers that needed sunshine and care, flowers that were wilting without their gardener. Eliza thought about her own childhood. The orphanage had been cold and strict. No one had braided her hair. No one had told her stories at bedtime. No one had made her feel precious or wanted. She had survived, yes, but she had always wondered what it would feel like to be loved like that. Maybe she could not give these girls their mother back, but maybe she could give them some of what she had always wished someone would give her. I have nowhere else to go, Eliza said honestly. I came here for a position that did not exist. I have no money and no prospects. If I accept your offer, I need you to understand that I am not doing it from a place of strength. I am doing it because I am desperate. Samuel nodded slowly. Then we are both desperate, miss. Maybe that is not the worst place to start. Desperate people understand each other. They do not judge. They just try to survive together. He extended his hand. Will you come with us? Will you try? Eliza looked at his hand. Work roughened and strong, an honest hand. She had trusted the wrong man once, and it had led her here, but something in Samuel Thornton's eyes was different. There was no hidden agenda there, just grief and hope and exhaustion. She took his hand. I will try. The ride to the ranch was quiet, except for the rain on the canvas. Eliza sat in the back with the girls. They did not speak to her. They barely looked at her. But at some point during the journey, Rose, the one with the broken doll, scooted just a little bit closer. The farmhouse was simple, but well built. Samuel showed Eliza to her room, which was small but clean with a window that looked out over the rolling hills. He had told the truth about the lock on the door. That first night, Eliza could not sleep. She lay in the dark, listening to the rain on the roof, and wondering if she had made the right choice, wondering if she had anything to offer these broken people, when she heard a small sound outside her door, a shuffling, a whisper. She rose and opened the door to find Lily and Rose standing there in their nightgowns, their faces uncertain. We cannot sleep, Lily said quietly. Mama used to sing to us. Eliza's heart clenched. She was not their mother. She could never be their mother. But she could sing. She knelt down to their level and opened her arms. Slowly, hesitantly, the girls stepped into her embrace. She held them gently, and began to sing an old lullaby she remembered from somewhere deep in her past. A song she did not even know she knew. And as she sang, she felt something wet on her shoulder. Tears. One of the twins was crying. But it was not sad crying. It was the kind of crying that comes when something frozen begins to thaw, when something closed begins to open. The next morning, Samuel found all three of them asleep in Eliza's bed, tangled together like they had known each other forever. And for the first time in 6 months, Rose smiled. It was small, just a tiny curve of her lips. But Samuel saw it and had to turn away to hide his own tears. In the weeks that followed, the farmhouse slowly changed. Eliza taught the girls their letters and numbers. She learned to braid their hair the way she wished. Someone had braided hers. She told them stories at bedtime, some from books, and some she made up as she went along. Lily started laughing again first. Then Rose followed. They began to play outside, picking wildflowers to put in jars on the kitchen table. They started calling Eliza by her name, then by Miss Eliza, then finally, one evening, by something that made everyone freeze. "Mama Eliza, can you read to us?" Rose had said it without thinking, and then she looked terrified, like she had done something wrong. But Eliza just smiled through her tears and said, "Of course, sweetheart. Always." Samuel proposed that winter, quietly, by the fireplace, while the girls slept upstairs. "I know it has only been a few months," he said, "and I know this started as an arrangement of necessity. But somewhere along the way, my heart decided it was more than that. You brought my daughters back to life, Eliza. You brought me back, too." Eliza took his hands in hers. "I was crying in the rain the night we met," she said. "I had lost everything. I thought my life was over. But it was not the end, Samuel. It was the beginning of us." They married in spring, when the wildflowers bloomed across the hills. Lily and Rose wore matching dresses and carried bouquets they had picked themselves. And on that day, standing in the sunshine, surrounded by love she never expected to find, Eliza finally understood something important. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us exactly where we need to be. Sometimes we must lose everything before we can find what truly matters. And sometimes a cowboy and his twins are exactly the family a lonely heart has been waiting for all along.